Hello, everyone. Maneko64 here, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So it's Sunday, April 5th, 2020. Let me just get rid of my email here so it doesn't beep. So yeah, the title of the live stream is The Credit. Sorry, I'll repeat. The creature from Jekyll Island is after your freedom and property. So most of you probably know the creature from Jekyll Island is the Federal Reserve, of course. But by my title, I mean generally central banks. This is not just for Americans. This is everywhere around the world where we have central banks. And also, I think we need to include all the governments of the world and the big corporations. They're all in it together with the central banks. So they're trying to get rid of our freedoms, like ID 2020, Bill Gates, Event 201, and also financially, they're trying to destroy small companies by doing what they're doing right now, shutting everyone down, the small companies. So we got already 121 people, 48 thumbs up. That's quite good. I'll try to keep up with everyone. Googiebo66, hello. Manepia, hello. David Bradley, hello. Mr. B, greetings, Mr. B. Steve Ince from West Sussex, not far from me. Alfredo from Lisbon, great for you from New Zealand. Hi, Les Paul, Nacho Fool. SW is a moderator. Hi, SW, thank you. Who have we got here? Good evening, Mario, on this lockdown Sunday. Yeah, it was a beautiful day here in London. I think the temperature got up to 20 degrees. I got up really early, like 6:30, and I went to walk, went to the park, had a walk in the park, a little bit of exercise. And this weekend, I did a bit of work outside in the house. I power washed the patios in the back. Today I did the side. Yesterday I did the back. Today I did the side and the front drive. So the house is nice and clean now for the spring. It's good to do a bit of physical work, of course. News for all. Hi, News for all. David Bradley. I think I saw Graham Hobbs. Hi, Graham. Nice to see you. M64 Worldwide Community. Yeah, that's a good one. David Walker from Providence. Hi, David. Someone there from Jordan. Sorry, I can't read Arabic, but hello anyway. Carlos the Man from Dubai. Mnemonic Gnome. John the Glass. Margaret Mack from South Carolina. Okay. Sovereigns. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the shortage is still there of precious metals. So let's see who else. Swamp Fox from Florida. Oh, you welcome, Swamp Fox. I've got a niece that lives in Florida. She's married to an American. She's originally from Switzerland, and she's got 2 little girls. We get a lot of messages and on WhatsApp, a lot of photos. They're doing okay. They live nice secluded area, which is good. Andrei from Poland. U.S. economy. I think all the economies around the world right now are going to go really down. We're already seeing it. It's not surprising if you shut economies down, if you shut businesses down, it's going to happen. I saw a video. I recommend Bellin GP. He's starting to make videos again. I'll write down the channel on YouTube. He usually talks a lot about gold and the markets, but today he did a video about how the big CEOs, they're still getting paid quite a bit, but they're furloughing or sacking or firing a lot of their workers, and they're not getting paid anything. He thinks the next big thing will be when people get angry, when they see that the big CEOs are still raking in millions, and while they are unemployed and don't have a job. And he talks about that being the fourth turning, and I agree with him. So I would go to that channel, have a look, Bellin GP. John Lord from Manchester in the UK. Hi, John. Cheap Laugh Kennedy. Oh, thank you, Cheap Laugh. So yeah, let's see. Victor Claudio, muito obrigado, or thank you very much. Morrison, if Fed buy all stocks sooner or later, they're going to own most of them. So money from the stock market shouldn't get to the street. Yeah, well, basically, not too sure the Fed will buy stocks for now. But what they're doing is they're allowing the big banks, the big corporations, the very wealthy, through intervening by buying bonds and keeping interest rates low. They're pushing these people to buy stocks as well. The small people are probably selling because they're scared. Yeah, eventually they could buy stocks as well. And the people who own the Fed behind the scenes, there are 12 regional banks of the Federal Reserve, and they're all private. So they're the people who are going to own everything. Already 10% of the top 10% already own about more than 3/4 of all the wealth, I would say, in the US. Tom Taylor, thank you for the super chat. He says you're a true master. Not really. I just have been looking at this subject for a long time. I'm not a master. I'm just done a lot of research, and anyone can do it. It just takes a bit of discipline, I guess, and keep looking at it. I guess I'm obsessed by it a little bit. You do need to be obsessed. And why? Why? Because I think where I was born and grew up, we always had a lot of inflation in Brazil. And no one seemed to know or understand. So when I started learning about gold, then I understood why we have inflation. And how did I learn about gold? Well, when I first bought a Krugerrand in the about 2002. And why did I do that? Well, because we had the dot-com bubble burst, and my wife and I were talking, and we said, why don't we buy some gold? So I bought some Krugerrands. And then the first time you touch a gold coin, it's really special. Of course, I have my wedding ring and a necklace, but it's not the same. And then with the internet, you start looking into it. Then I got into the Austrian School of Economics, the Mises Institute, and then from there, it's kind of caught my imagination, and I've kept looking at it. So Michael McConville, thank you for the super chat from Ireland. Thanks for your channel. It's become one of my favorites. Can I ask your opinion on the pound sterling? Do you think it will reach parity with the euro and the dollar? Well, up until a couple of weeks ago, the pound was it? I think it was. Yeah, it got hammered, got down to 114, and we rallied massively only because the Federal Reserve has actually opened a repo window, like they have the repo for the primary dealers. They opened it to foreign central banks. So what the UK has done is they pawned their reserves of treasuries. I think the UK has about 175 billion in treasuries or foreign reserves. And with that, they borrowed money from the Fed, borrowed dollars. So they took those dollars and sold it to buy pounds to protect the pound. But yeah, I do think in the long term, the pound will continue to go down versus the euro and the dollar. But I think it will go down a lot more versus gold. As I've said before, people need to stop thinking about hedging their national currencies with other national currencies. It's a losing proposition. I think personally, I would stick to hedging with gold. But I do think the dollar and the euro will outperform the pound, though. We got 358 people already. Billy just jumped off the sofa. He's lying down on the floor now. Cozy Fantuti, Greg Monero says Fed are buying stocks. They might be. I haven't seen. He could be right, but he would need to know someone at the Fed, because if you look at their balance sheet and the numbers, there is nothing saying that they're buying stocks. I think that's pure speculation, even though I do like Greg Monero, but I wouldn't say that they're doing it. Par bar, it says £2 because that's the face value, £2. That's all it is. I've got a coin here. I'll show it to you in a minute. It's 1.2 ounces. It's a Mexican gold coin. Here you go. And it says 50 pesos. But I'm sure 50 pesos is, you can't get anything with 50 pesos. The reason they put that low amount is that to keep it out of circulation, so that no one will ever use that to buy something with £2, because the ounce of silver is a lot higher than £2. If they had £100 face value on it, yeah, it would start going into circulation. Yeah, Kissinger has shown up recently. He said that something needs to be done in order for the system not to implode. He said the world could get really bad. I think he used the term things could get on fire or something if the powers that be don't fix things. And I think he's right. And I think there's a good chance they might not. Smoke and mirrors, all currencies are sinking in relation to one another. No, they can't. They can't sink. They can't, because if you think about what you said there, the dollar is sinking against the euro, let's say, but then, so the euro can't be sinking against the dollar if the dollar is sinking against it. The only currency that all the national currencies can sink against, and it is already doing, is gold. And that's why you need to hold gold, because that will be the well, it's ironic. I'll say it's going to be the silver bullet for the powers that be to bring back some semblance of order in the monetary realm. They'll have to revert back to gold. They will do it very reluctantly, but they'll have to. So yeah, you can't really say that all fiat currencies are sinking against each other. That doesn't make sense. Because if the dollar is sinking against the euro is not sinking. I think what you mean is against precious metals and real things, tangible goods. Scouse Pete, what's your thoughts on paper silver contracts? Do you think federal banks buying up silver contracts so they can buy physical, so keep the price of silver down? I'm not sure what you mean by federal banks, really. And if they're, well, I think you mean JP Morgan buying silver futures. Yeah, there's a lot of manipulation in silver and in gold, but eventually that manipulation will end. They can't manipulate the market forever. Do you think COMEX will default or have many aces up their sleeves? Pablo Pina. COMEX itself is an exchange, so COMEX cannot default. It's the brokers and the members of COMEX, the banks that deal in COMEX, that can default. So COMEX could just decide to pay people with dollars, with Federal Reserve notes. In 1980, when the Hunt brothers drove they say they tried to corner the silver market, but the Hunt brothers were buying physical silver since the early 70s. So yeah, they can do anything. The regulators and the banks, I wouldn't deal in COMEX. I wouldn't get involved in COMEX. But what's happening now, it seems, is that as people can't get physical from elsewhere, they've gone to COMEX thinking that COMEX has gold. But COMEX doesn't have any gold. And that's why we're seeing these problems on COMEX. I think all it's going to show is that COMEX is a fraud, really. And it could get worse because if these lockdowns continue, more and more people are going to try to get physical gold and silver, and they're not going to be able to get it through their normal avenues. So they're going to try to get it through COMEX. Mike from Sacramento. Hi, Mike. You're welcome. Yeah, Crimex. I've called that. I've called it that many times. IBE. Why it won't work this time? Well, because the system is already heavily burdened by debt and by printing money. All that means is that they're buying government debt. And why is that? Well, because all these packages, the stimulus from the federal government, they have to do it through issuing treasuries. The Fed's going to buy that. And the thing is, we already have 110% of GDP in debt. The world is drowning in debt. So that is a burden. Basically, that is consuming the future, and we've consumed too much of the future. The other thing is, well, the Fed cut rates from a very low level, from like just over 2%. I noted that back in 1929, the discount rate of the Federal Reserve in New York was 6%. They were able to cut it to 1.5%. They've already, their balance sheet is exploding. It's like almost 6 trillion. It's gone from about 3.6 trillion less than 9 months ago now to 6 trillion. And what's the problem with that? Well, people will lose faith and confidence in the dollar, in the paper dollar, if they see this balance sheet going up so much, because that's all just funny money. They're just creating money out of thin air. That's all the balance sheet is. Here's the link to the balance sheet. You can have a look from the St. Louis Fed. SAC Media, are Glint still delivering physical for anything over 10 grams for a charge? You need to check that with them. I don't know. About Glint, I actually did buy a little gold from them on Friday. I had some extra fiat money. March was quite a good month for me, so I did buy some. It's a small, very small amount of what I really have, but I thought I'd buy a little bit through Glint. Yeah, and if you go, if you're interested in Glint, they do keep the physical gold for you in Switzerland in your name, allocated account, and you get, of course, prepaid debit card. So it's GlintPay. And you can use my referral code if you open an account with them, Mario Glint 79. Yeah, I think it's a good service. Yeah, they went into administration because of a technical thing last year, that people's money and gold were frozen, but they came back from that administration. No one lost anything. So they've proven that it works. And yeah, but people have their preferences. Some people prefer physical gold and silver. Some people might want to have a little bit of money with Glint or gold with GlintPay. Graham Hobbs, would you explain your views on the huge JP Morgan silver stash? Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about that for many years. Forgot the guy's name in the States. He writes a lot about that. But the thing is, JP Morgan is the biggest futures broker. I remember when I worked in the futures market, a lot of my clients had their accounts with JP Morgan. And why would they deal with me? Well, because there's something called giving up trades. You can have your account where you clear the trades and you keep your money with JP Morgan, but you can have a give up account. So you come to me and you execute the trades with me. And then the client says, can you give this trade up to JP Morgan account so-and-so? And that's what you do. And I can tell you, JP Morgan has probably got the most clients in the futures market. So I'm not too sure if all this silver has been kept by JP Morgan. If it's not, some of it is not for their clients. JP Morgan, of course, is the banker for the US Treasury. And why is that? Well, because they helped bail out the Treasury in the 1890s. They had a shortage of gold. JP Morgan organized some gold loans for them. So yeah, maybe they are doing something for the US government. It could be the reason why. Those two reasons, I would say. Other than that, I can't tell you exactly because don't have a, I know someone at JP Morgan actually, but he wouldn't know that. And I wouldn't ask because he wouldn't be able to tell me anyway. Aaron Levy, the COMEX, as I said, is an exchange, so they can't default. The COMEX is where it's like saying, can, if you go to a farmer's market, the market itself cannot default, but each individual farmer can default. So that's what I mean. The participants might default, but COMEX itself doesn't really have any positions, but they could close the exchange if it gets disorderly and too many people come for delivery. And I think we need to keep an eye on for the April deliveries. People are still probably asking for deliveries. And yeah, they could change the rules. They could declare force majeure, which is an excuse. They could use this crisis as an excuse and then default. But it would be the dealers, the brokers, the speculators that would be bailed out. COMEX itself doesn't trade. Anywhere to hide? Well, as I've been saying for years, and a lot of people over the years doing the videos, I said, try to get out of debt. But then someone would say, well, I can borrow really cheaply, and I want to borrow to buy gold or buy a house or a second house. But when you see what's happening now, and I know it's unusual, but you don't really want to be a lender or a borrower right now. I think it's very risky, especially with what's going on with this crisis. They can do anything. They can shut it down, open it whenever they want. And I was listening to Catherine Austin Fitz. She did a really good interview with Greg Hunter. And she said, yeah, they're trying, in the US, they want to help small businesses, but the banks are going to charge them over 5% for the loans. And the banks will borrow from the Fed at 0. And guess who's financing the Fed? The taxpayer. And why do I say that? Well, because the Fed prints money out of thin air to buy treasuries. Treasuries are on the back of the taxpayers. So yeah, I try to hide away from the system, be outside the system as much as possible, as I've said. Yeah, DR, I saw that. I was surprised. Alistair McLeod predicting collapse this year. That's fairly significant because he usually is not the kind of person to make those kinds of predictions. Some of you have asked me to interview him. Well, I looked at the Gold Money website. There's nowhere there to contact anyone, so I don't know how to get a hold of him. But I'll keep an eye for it. I'll keep an eye on it. Greg Manorino, a shill for the deep state? I don't know. Maybe someone else has a better idea. Baz Vandenberg, do you also prepare for a possible supply chain problem? Yeah, that's a good question. I think we need to, yeah. This is what Catherine Austin Fitts said today, because Greg Hunter actually asked her about gold. And she said, yeah, I think gold is going to do well. It's going to outperform almost all other assets. But she said the best investment you can make going forward is food. So, yeah, I am thinking about that. Yeah, how do you do that? It's difficult. You need to. She was talking about the fact that farmers are having a hard time because a lot of the supermarkets, a lot of the shops, small shops that shut down, are not buying food from them. So that's something to keep in mind. And I think each individual has his own circumstance. I'm thinking about getting a greenhouse for the garden to grow a few things. Yeah, that's small, but yeah. How much silver? Lawrence William asks. Well, how much should you save? That's what I always tell people. It depends on the individual because silver is money. So how much money do you want to save? How much money do you think you need? Dennis Michael says, even hard to get seeds. I think my wife and my daughter, they've started growing like green onions. I know it's not much, but it's something that's nice. Green onions. I think you just cut the green onions and you put it in a cup. They're doing that. And also normal onions. They're starting to do that. Or maybe I think even when this crisis is over, this health crisis, and there's all clear, I think then people need to start thinking about, and at least we are thinking about, maybe moving out of the. I'm not that close to the center of London, but thinking about moving away into the country, maybe into a small rural property. That could be something as well that I think people need to think about. Yeah, some people call it a hobby farm, Rumpelstiltskin. Yeah, small family farm. No, Mobius, don't get a loan. If you get a loan, you're in the system. You're beholden to the bankers. They could start a crisis and then basically screw you. So no, don't get a loan to buy gold. I wouldn't personally. So-called Silver, thank you for the super chat donation. I appreciate it. What program do I use to edit my videos? iMovies. I have a iMac computer. I'm really happy with it. That's what I'm used to. There might be better ones, but that's what I use. iMovie. So a little bit more about the title of the live stream. The creature from Jekyll Island is after your freedom and property. So the freedom part, I think, is to do with ID 2020. That's Bill Gates, Rockefeller Foundation, all these big globalists. They're looking to do that. And they might even inject that into some kind of vaccine. They're going to track everyone. I think we lost a lot of freedoms already after the big event 19 years ago. Most of you know what that is, I assume. I don't want to keep mentioning it. So yeah, that's in peril, freedom. So I think having a little bit of financial protection outside the system will go a long way in maybe giving you a little bit of freedom. It's really hard, I think, but that's the only thing we can do. What about property? Well, the property part is why I told the previous viewer there who asked, should I borrow to buy gold? No, because if you borrow to buy gold, they can screw you and then you don't have your gold anymore. So that's what I think is happening. They want to buy everything. They do pump and dump, don't they? The globalists and the central bankers, they pump the system up with credit. They get people to get involved, and then they pull the plug like they're doing right now, and then people lose everything. They sell because they don't know what's really happening. They sell and they lose a lot of money, and then eventually the market comes back up. Even though I think this time it's going to take many years for things to get back to normal. Yeah, and one thing that's a bit frustrating, you look at the mainstream media. I looked at the telegraph.co.uk, and their economics market editor, or one of their writers, he says, the economy shows the peril of ignoring Bill Gates' prophecy. So these people are talking about him as if he was a hero, Bill Gates. And I think it's far from it. It's anything the opposite. Just as Americans, my mortgage is my only debt. If they get stupid with mortgage, I'm willing to walk from this house and buy a cheap house with cash. Yeah, I mean, that's what I did in 2015. I sold my old house, had a small mortgage, but at the time I was closing down my business that I tried to start. Well, I did start at a pawnbroking franchise for 2 years. And I didn't want to have the mortgage, so we sold the house. And we bought a smaller house, but it's actually not that much smaller, but we were able to pay everything off and have something left over. And I'm happy I did that. And I'm happy I didn't try to continue in the pawnbroking business, because can you imagine if I'd be doing that right now? I'd be with all the lockdown and everything, I'd be screwed. So I'm glad I did that. I mean, the business was pretty good. I ran it for 2 years, 2012 to 2014, but I just couldn't see it making enough money to justify it. So I have to thank my wife for that, because she said, I don't think it's worth it. And she was right. Breaking news, Boris Johnson in hospital. Equitable Apple, you're still of the belief the mainstream media is looking after you? No, I'm not. That's why I haven't watched television. I don't even have a television at home. I haven't watched it for ages. The only reason I read the mainstream media and I subscribe to the FT is because the old saying, the art of war, Sun Tzu, Chinese philosopher, you need to know your enemy better than your friends. So doesn't mean to say that I believe them, but you need to know what they're thinking. Annabelle Franks, buying stocks, I would consider. I think it's still a little early. Maybe wait until the Dow gold ratio gets down to around 1, and maybe buy like utilities and stocks like that pay a dividend. So yeah, but I think it's a little early. Yeah, the new 20-pound note. My daughter isn't into the stuff we talk about, but she was telling me about where is it? She saw someone commenting about the 20-pound notes, the new ones, and I'll show it to you. It's quite. She said that she saw on the internet that some people were saying that there was a picture of the virus on the 20-pound note. So this is what she meant here. That little thing here, that if you look at if you do COVID-19 and you Google images, it looks similar to that, doesn't it? So, and then the strange thing is, if you turn it right on the other side, opposite of this little thing, I don't know what that is. If you look at the other side, look what's there. It's the crown. So you got the crown here, and you got the little drawing here that looks like the COVID-19 virus. So I don't know. Maybe people like someone on Twitter that I communicate with, I told him about that, and he said, well, maybe some people have too much time on their hands. It could be true. It could be a coincidence. John Meyer, wow, thank you very much. Super chat donation. Social distancing works with the fixed measure standard. So we know what 1.5 meters is, but the social distance between haves and have-nots comes from ignoring the fixed standard of weights for real money. Most people do not know that standard. Good point. I mean, from reading about the hyperinflation in Germany and any country, like in Brazil as well, with the inflation, people lose all sense of rules and customs and morals. Even sometimes you read about the hyperinflation in Germany, Weimar Germany. A lot of families were devastated financially, and even women, young women from fairly good families, middle class or from doctors, they went into prostitution. So yeah, it's fiat money, inflation, and debt has really bad side effects. And some people, yeah, and it's difficult to explain that sometimes to people. So I agree with you on that about the social distancing. Oh, even here in England, I think they don't have that rule anymore, but you could get fined for spitting on the pavement outside in the streets. And that was for a reason. But they don't have that rule anymore. But people still respect that. Yeah, so that's quite interesting about the 20-pound note, the new one. And so it looks like there's the crown there on that side. You can see it. And then something that looks a little bit like the way they depict the coronavirus. There's an interesting video. I'm going to put the link here for you to watch. This is from a doctor in one of the hospitals in New York. I really recommend you watch that, talking about what's going on. Venezuela and their gold. Well, Venezuela in 2011, I think they got 100 tons back. And the British Bank of England did send it to Chavez at the time, 100 tons. Now they try to get, I think, 10 or 8 tons, and they blocked it. I don't think they've gotten it back, the little that they have left in London. And from what I see, it looks like the U.S. Government is kind of ratcheting up the pressure on Iran and Venezuela, those two countries. Kunlob, Kunlob, they were involved. Jacob Schiff, he was involved in the meeting at Jekyll Island. So that's part of the. I think Jacob Schiff was the father-in-law of Warburg. Paul Warburg was there as well. So we also had representatives of J.P. Morgan and Citibank, Rockefellers. They were all at Jekyll Island in 1910. So the other book that is a good book about central banks is The Tower of Basel, about the BIS. I recommend that. Thank you, Jen West, $9.99 super chat. Thank you. I appreciate it. And the other book that I also recommend is by Ron Paul, which I'm rereading, and it's really good. And the Fed, I think that came out in 2009. And some people might say, well, he hasn't succeeded. The Fed's still very powerful. But I think we need to keep going on about the Fed, that It's a communist instrument. It's not free markets. It's nothing about freedom, nothing about markets. It's a cartel. You know, people have a go at OPEC, but central banks, BIS, it's a cartel as well. It's a money cartel. The other book is that I recommend is The Secrets of the Federal Reserve by Eustace Mullins. A lot of people, he died a few years ago. A lot of people say he's an anti-Semite. That's the other thing I wanted to say. I got a message from someone last week because I actually mentioned the name Rothschild, and said, "Oh, you're anti-Semitic. You know, please don't." But all I have to say is that I don't care what religion people are, as long as they're doing something that I think is wrong in terms of the system. I mean, Rockefellers, Morgans, they weren't Jewish. So that's all I have to say about that. That's why I'd never focus on religion and ethnicity. I just look at the system and the monetary system. Rees-Mogg will take over. Well, there is one guy in the UK that's a little bit like Ron Paul in terms of the money. His name is he's an MP, Stephen Baker. He made a speech in Parliament a few years ago, espousing the virtues of sound money and gold. But one thing we need to have is getting rid of the central banks, because you can't have sound money with central banks. And why do I focus on the Fed instead of the Bank of England? Well, because I think in the US, there's much more awareness about how central banks are detrimental to freedom and the free market than in the UK. But the thing is, if it happens in the US, if they do abolish the Fed or end the Fed, I think it will be an example for other countries. So, because the US usually leads the way, be it in a good way or in a bad way as well. Yeah, that's right. Not sure how to say your name. About frightening the critics. Panama Canal. Yeah, the Panama Canal now, I think, is now owned and run by the Chinese. Colin Nicholas, Stephen Becker recently said, "I hope we can save our currency." Well, I don't agree with him. I don't think it's worth saving because it's not our currency. Actually, it's the Bank of England is not ours, really. It's a yeah. I think don't agree with him on that. I'm not sure. He needs to rethink his thinking in that sense, I would say. When did the Chinese control the Panama Canal? I think they own it now, the Chinese. Let's see, Panama. Because I think the Americans under Jimmy Carter gave it back to, well, they didn't give it back. They gave it to the Panamanians. It used to be owned by the US, but let's see now who's in control. Well, it's owned by Panama, I guess, Panama Canal Authority, but I think the Chinese are heavily involved now in the Panama Canal. So I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I don't think they own it, but they're heavily involved. Let's have a look. Anyway. The other thing I heard is the Chinese are heavily involved in Italy, in the economy in Italy. Chinese have a base at the eastern side of the canal. There you go. Don't have a view on Bank of Montreal. Sorry. Are you nervous about the current situation? Not financially, but you know, freedom-wise. Not that we have that much freedom, I would say. I think this is a real power grab, what's going on. So that does concern me, but I think it doesn't scare me or worry me. No, no. How come Eurozone isn't helping Italy with crisis? I don't know. I don't know. Eurozone, you know, the European Union, they can't really even organize a piss up in the brewery, is the old saying. So there you go. And I think Italy will probably, I've already seen there's movements in Italy to try to leave the EU now because of this. So it could lead to the breakup of the EU even more. Executive Order 6102. Yeah, that was how can in 1975, of course, it was Americans were allowed to own gold again. Reading actually Ron Paul's book, he said he was buying gold before 1975 because part of the rules under Executive Order 6102 later on was that you could buy any coins before 1947, so there were exemptions. So for example, this Mexican coin here, the Mexicans made a 1.2 ounce coin and they put 1947 on it, even though it was minted after 1947. So you can buy this. There's an exemption for this. You could buy sovereigns. There's loads of sovereigns pre-1947, British sovereigns, and also double eagles. There's loads of double eagles, and they're not necessarily numismatic, even though they're considered numismatic. I've got some double eagles from the 1880s, and I paid the you know, the normal price, bullion price for it. No, DMC spread betters. No, I've been using them. In February, I did quite well, and March, the beginning of March. But I found later on, towards the second half of March, like IG.com, when the market gets too unstable, you're not allowed to trade, and then it has a little phone next to the thing you're trading, and you're supposed to call to be able to trade, and you call and no one answers. So yeah, the thing is, if you get a a meltdown in the market, you won't be able to get out. So I don't recommend you well, you might want to put a little bit to play around with it, but not that much. So I don't recommend the spread betters. Do I have a reading list anywhere? I've made videos. If you go on my YouTube channel under videos and search book stream, I've done book streams. Like I used to call these Sunday live streams sometimes book stream. And I've done videos about the books that I like. You can have a look. Maybe I'll do another one next Sunday. I'll bring out some more books, and I'll do it next Sunday. I think today I've only brought four books, mostly about the Fed. A question here, Johnny OC, how long do you think Western world interest rates will stay at near zero? Yeah, the mainstream thinking, you know, the thinking is that it will stay like Japan for many, many, many years. And it could, but I think that would be a bad thing. It would be, you know, it would just be like a a slowdown, like lost decades. I would rather it just spiked and everything imploded so we could start again. I'm sure they're going to try to keep trying to make it stay near zero. And why is that? Well, because the governments now and the central banks are creating so much money and credit to try to revive the economies that the debt is going to go exponential. We're already seeing, I think they're forecasting the national debt to be at 30 trillion, is it? Let's see the debt clock. So yeah, they need to keep interest rates low, or else the governments and the banks can't survive. So, for example, they're seeing already if you go on usdebt.org, they're forecasting already 34 trillion, the national debt, in 4 years. So if interest rates start rising, yeah, that they won't be able to support that. So they're going to try as hard as possible. I don't think it's going to work. People are going to lose faith and confidence in the currency. Do you think S&P 500 will shoot up after Corona? I don't know. It could rally, but I don't think we'll make a new high. It could rally up towards 3,000, but then it's going to go back down. Pablo, do you see a conflict with 3 superpowers in the world over the reserve currency? Yeah, Catherine Austin Fitz seems to be concerned about that. She thinks a lot of what's going on in the world is a battle between the Anglo-American side, the dollar side, versus the Chinese side, and the One Belt, One Road initiative. Because I think it was McKendrick. He was like a historian, British author in the 19th century, I think, maybe early 20th century. And he said the country that controls the island of Europe, Eurasia, the country that controls Eurasia controls the world. So yeah, the One Belt, One Road initiative is a threat to the Anglo-American empire, to the dollar empire. And the other thing they're doing, the Chinese, they're spending their dollar reserves to build up that infrastructure. So yeah, it's possible. Let's hope there won't be a war, a hot war. But I think you read some people, politicians and commentators in the mainstream, and that's why it's good to read even what the enemy is saying, so to speak. And a lot of them are comparing what's going on now with the war. So I think they're already kind of invading our freedoms or usurping our freedoms and property by equating what's going on with a war. So a hot war would be even worse, of course. The Raven there talks to ban any 5G conspiracy. You mean the truth about 5G? Probably. The thing about what's going on, there's so many opinions, so many different opinions and ideas that I'm not going to touch upon it because it's going to make you give you a headache. I'm going to keep focusing on the financial side. At least we can try to protect ourselves financially. For the other things, I think even though I think I know a little bit about it, I'm not as well versed, but I agree with you. That is possible. They could ban that. Feet Baloo. Oh, he's answering someone else. Yeah, yeah, that's right, Graham Hobbs. That's ironic, isn't it? Alan Mayer, yeah, it will definitely help you having silver. All right, I'll take a few more questions. We're getting near the hour mark. That's usually how long we do it here. Dave Humphreys, I heard Jim Riggers say the C word is man-made, and Wuhan is Chinese Center for Biological Weapons. Well, and some people think it's. I mean, I'll put the link again. Listen to this doctor from a New York hospital. He's in the ICU unit, ICU, and listen to him. He basically says that. Well, listen to him. I'm not really not that knowledgeable about these things, but I highly recommend you watch that video. Diego, 5G. I don't know much about 5G in England, but I've heard that it is dangerous. It's almost like as strong as a weapon. And the reason they're bringing that out is to have the Internet of Things, everything connected to the internet. So you walk around and everything is connected. Is it worth it? I don't know. Some people say that the reason for the Spanish flu after World War I was that the world started having radio, right? So all the radio waves was a new kind of waves that affected humans. So, and also I think after World War II, radar waves were I don't know, so there's a lot of theories out there. But what I'm focusing on is that be as it may, whatever it is, it's bringing down the financial system, I would say, the world economy. And it's just a catalyst because the system we have, the fiat debt-based monetary system, where you need ever-increasing debt, where you have a quadrillion or more of derivatives, that's not sustainable. So it's a good cover for them to bring the system down. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for participating. Thank you for the super chat donations. And I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.